What's going on, you guys? Welcome back to another Bitget video. It's gonna be a fun one. Today we are gonna talk about not re-entering trades. Big problem for newbies. Gotta cut the habit. All right, let's get right into this video. It's gonna be a good one. I'm gonna tell you how to make millions of dollars trading because that is the goal, right? So yeah, I'm pretty sure after this video, you're probably gonna make $10 billion in the next hour. And this will be the last video you ever have to watch. So yeah, let's just get right into it, you guys. Okay, you guys, this is gonna be a pretty basic video, but I think this needs talked about because nobody really talks about not re-entering a trade after you enter it. So let's just say, I'm just gonna use this example here. Let's say you just take a long at support, and you know, risk management's obviously important. So we always want to use this tool to kind of visualize our percentage risk, in my opinion. And let's just say you're gonna target this breakdown resistance. All right, so you got a 1% risk, 5% reward. That's great, lovely. Good risk reward. And so let's get rid of this and let's talk about how emotions affect our trading. Okay, so let's just say price gets up to here. All right, that's your target. That was your target for the trade setup. So you exit, right? Well, price drops and you're like, oh, sweet, that was great that I exited, you know, and then all of a sudden you're just staring at the chart and it pumps and you're like, oh man, I'm an idiot. Why'd I exit that trade? And you're like, oh, okay, well, oh, it's going to pull back a little bit. All right, I'm not going to FOMO into this. I should have held my long. And then it pumps a little bit and kind of chops around. And then up here it pumps, and this candle, if we zoom in here, is going to look super green at some point, right? Because it had to pump up there and it would have been nice and big and green. And that's when you FOMO because you re-entered a position after you already exited, okay? So you re-enter up here and it drops and you're like, well, I'm just going to hold for now. And then it breaks up and you're feeling good about it. And maybe you just turn off the computer, you don't have a stop loss or whatever, or you have a really wide stop loss and you're just like, all right, well, I'm just going to hold this and see what happens. And you don't really, there was no trade set up there, right? You have no trade set up right now. You were just FOMO'd back into your old position that had already played out. And now, eventually, you decide to sell right here. Okay, because this is all just slow BS chop. You're like, oh, it's okay. And then here you're like, oh, dude, should I sell this? I don't know. And then it bounces up and you're like, okay, I'm good. And then it pumps and you get all cocky and you're excited again and you think you're going to make all this money, right? And you're like, oh, thank God I didn't panic sell. And it just slow chops forever. And it kind of dips here and you're like, oh man, if this goes any lower, I'm going to have to sell. And then what happens? Boom, it tanks, and now you sell at the bottom because you didn't have a plan. Not only that, you gave back 5%, which was basically what you just made. So what happens here is a lot of newbies just do that over and over and over. Or what happens is they close here before their target, which isn't the end of the world, but if you're closing, you should be closing for a reason, right? Anytime you close a trade, it's because you had a reason, all right? And now let's say maybe this is up here and you don't want to close yet, even though I hit your target. Okay, that's fine, but then you're probably going to close on this bearish engulfing candle right here. You got a breakdown, a bearish engulfing, you're probably going to close there if you haven't closed already. So it's okay sometimes to try and let your trades run past target, but most times it's not going to work out. Your target's there for a reason, okay? And if you are going to let it run past target, you're going to attempt to, then you need to have some invalidation point or maybe tighten your stop loss up or something to make sure you're locking in profits, because once your target has been reached, the trade is over. And there's a really good example would be like a pattern, and I'm just going to use Apple because I know that there was a low time frame head and shoulders this morning, and so that'll be a really easy one to talk about, okay? So here's a great example. Okay, we have a head and shoulders. I have multiple videos on how to trade head and shoulders, so if you want to watch those. But anyway, for this target, head to the neckline, and then we're going to go down here and bam. Look how perfectly that hits target. Okay, now it can be very easy to want to hold this further. The chart probably looked like crap down here. We had some high sell volume, whatever. I know Bitcoin was dumping at the time as well. So if you're in this trade, you might have been like, oh man, this thing's gonna go way lower. I should keep holding. All right, well, you should have an invalidation if you want to keep holding through this trade, because as you can see here, if you entered right here on this retest, what happened? and you got greedy and didn't close, your trade actually came back to break even. So if you did one of those things where you're like, oh, well, this is a great trade setup, I'm going to do this. Okay, I'm going to put my stop loss up here. Here's my risk to reward. Beautiful. And oh, it dropped deep. I'm getting greedy. I'm going to put my stop loss at break even. Bam, you just got wicked out of your trade. You made no money. The setup had played out. And after that, you need to find a new setup. So you can re-enter trades, but you need to find a new setup. And what I mean by that is, let's just say, let's try to find a quick setup on a Bitcoin chart here. All right, so here we're going to use this as an example. Let's say that we're at resistance here, okay? And I think we're going to reject that resistance, and we're going to go back to this trend line, which is down here. All right, so we go down to support, and here's my trade setup. It's going to look like this, and this is just basically a range trade setup, all right? So I've got a tight stop loss here above resistance and a target at support. Now, I'm going to close this trade when it hits target. Now, that doesn't mean that I can't find another trade setup, which does not mean that I'm getting back into a trade, okay? Now, I'm not getting back into the same trade. After I close this, I'm going, okay, I'm going to close this here. I'm going to see if this breaks down and retest, and then I can get back in another trade, okay? And so what happens here is I close, I assess what happens, it breaks down, it retests, and look, I can get back into a new trade. So it breaks down, retests, I now have a new setup, okay? And we'll just say my target would probably be this support area here. So this is just another range trade for me as a low time frame trader. And you can see here it would have rejected, hit resistance or hit support. I would have closed my trade. And as you can see, it bounced here, okay? But this is how people get chopped up because they don't set rules. They don't find setups, they just re-enter a trade because they feel like they missed out, right? And what happens a lot of times is a lot of you would close here at target and then it would drop a little bit more and you'd be like, it's gonna go way lower, I gotta get in. And then it would bounce up here and you'd close and you'd take a loss, and then it would drop again and you'd say, oh man, I'm an idiot, it's gonna drop, I should have gotten in the short. So you get back in and then it rockets again and then you close again, you get at a loss, and then it tanks again to where you thought it was going to go. And that is how a new trader gets wrecked in these markets. So anytime you enter a trade, you need an individual setup, right? A brand new setup that is different, that is individual in itself, and not just re-entering an old trade. And not only that, sometimes you may enter a trade before it reaches target, and that's okay too, because like in a bull market, we're currently in a bear market, and sometimes your longs will literally just not hit your target, okay? Let's say that, let's just say I long this support down here, and my target is this resistance, and it doesn't reach. Okay, that's totally fine if I want to take profit up here or take profit early down here after this bearish engulfing candle, okay? So I didn't make full profit, but I didn't hold and get stopped out at break even. I still took some profit before I would have gotten stopped out either at break even or at a loss below this wick, okay? That's totally fine thing to do, but you're never going to re-enter that trade. You're not going to look to re-enter that trade. You're going to completely find another trade in a different area, different time frame, whatever, using different criteria, because that trade is no longer valid to you. You've already exited it. You exited that trade early for a reason. So even if I would have gotten out, let's say here, okay, on this breakdown or whatever, retest, if it keeps going up, I'm not going to FOMO back into that, all right? Because that will happen sometimes as well, where you'll close a trade early and then it'll head up to target, and and what I've personally experienced and seen happen is sometimes, like let's say you exit this trade on this wick, okay? So it wicks up here and it starts to go down, and you're like, I'm gonna get out right here. Okay, that's totally fine. And then what happens is it breaks up and you're like, oh, I'm going to get in here. Or even let's say you get in like down here. Like you still get in kind of early and you're like, all right, well, this is going to run to target. I'll just close at my regular target. And then it still doesn't hit that. And then all of a sudden you end up taking a loss again. And a lot of people like that's how you give back profits, and you're not taking high probability setups that will be successful over time. Now, the key here is to make strategies that are successful a handful of times, right? Whatever percentage it is, if it's a 1 to 3 risk to reward, okay, then you only need to be successful every third time, right? Like if you're risking if you're going in 1% risk and 0.3% reward, or sorry, 0.3% risk and 1% reward, that's a 1 to 3, right? And you don't need to be successful every time, or you could do a 2 to 1. But you're, again, giving yourself, over the long run, if this is successful more than 50% of the time, you're going to be making money, or at least 50% of the time, okay? But then you start taking these low probability emotional setups, and those are just going to wreck you emotionally, and you're going to struggle trading overall, just because you're going to be getting chopped up and you're not going to be seeing the charts clearly. So when this happens to you guys, sometimes it's just going to happen because the market conditions suck. And right now the conditions have been rough, and it's very easy to get shaken out of a trade early, or just get chopped up completely, or switch bias. All right. And the other thing is too, I never just immediately switch a position after I close one. All right. So if I'm in a long, I never just immediately short. And if I'm in a short, I never just immediately long after I close these positions, because I always like to give my emotions and my brain a chance to kind of disconnect from the chart, put it away, and then come back and see what it looks like after the fact. Okay. So that's kind of the biggest points I want you guys to take away, is really need to find setups here and not just be re-entering trades that have played out, or trades that you closed for a reason. Okay. So I don't know how much more I can hammer that home. If you have any questions down in the comments, please let me know. This is always something we could talk about in live stream if you guys had more questions about it, or wanted me to get a little bit more in depth. But I'm sure you all have experienced this before, as I have in the past as well. And it's all about discipline and finding reliable setups. So I appreciate you guys all for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. Again, leave me a comment below if you have any questions, or you want me to cover any more topics. Hope you guys enjoyed this Bitget video, and I will catch you on the next one. Peace.